All right, let's talk about a 9-digit number that's at the center of a huge debate here in the US. It's called the Individual Taxpayer Identification Number, or ITIN. Now, on the surface, it's just a tool for the IRS to collect taxes. But as we're going to see, it's become tangled up in a really complex conversation about privacy, trust, and immigration.
And that really gets us to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? How on earth can a number that's literally designed to help people pay their taxes end up being used for immigration enforcement? It feels like a total contradiction. So let's unpack how this system was supposed to work and where the cracks start to appear.
To really get this, we have to go back to the beginning. We need to understand the original promise of the ITIN. What was it actually created to do in the first place?
So, picture this, it's 1996. The reality is, US tax law says if you earn money here, you have to pay taxes on it, period. No matter your immigration status. The problem? Lots of people didn't have a social security number, so they literally couldn't file. So the IRS creates the ITIN. It's a 9-digit number. Fun fact, it always starts with the number 9, and it's basically a key that lets people who can't get a social security number into the tax system to pay what they owe. Now, the IRS is crystal clear about this, and it's super important to remember what an ITIN is not. It is not a work permit. It does not make you eligible for social security benefits. And it absolutely, positively does not change your immigration status. By design, its purpose is incredibly narrow. It is purely a tool for tax administration. That's it.
Okay, so if you're the IRS and your goal is to get people to voluntarily come forward, identify themselves, and pay taxes, how do you convince them it's safe? You have to build a firewall, and that's exactly what they did. Let's look at the engine that makes this whole thing run, the promise of confidentiality.
That firewall has an official name, Internal Revenue Code Section 6103. This is the bedrock of privacy for the entire US tax system. Essentially, it's a law that says the IRS can't just hand over your tax information to other government agencies, and that includes immigration enforcement. This legal shield is what creates the trust that the whole ITIN program depends on.
And did that trust work? Well, the numbers kind of speak for themselves. By the end of 2022, there were over 5.8 million active ITINs being used. So we're not talking about some small niche program, we're talking about millions of people who are relying on that confidentiality promise to follow the law.
And the economic impact? It's huge. Just look at 2019. ITIN filers contributed a net of $5.8 billion in taxes. That's billions with a B. That's money funding our schools, roads, and all sorts of public services. It just goes to show that when you create a way for people to comply, it generates a ton of revenue.
You know, this isn't some new concern either. Check out this quote from the IRS commissioner way back in 2004. He flat out warned that if they started sharing this data with immigration, it would have a chilling effect on the whole program. The guy in charge of collecting taxes knew that trust was everything. But here's the thing about firewalls. They're almost never perfect. In Section 6103, that powerful privacy law was written with a few very specific, very narrow exceptions. You could think of it as a kind of legal backdoor. So let's take a look at how that firewall can be breached. So here's how that backdoor opens. It's not a simple phone call. First, another federal agency has to be working on a criminal investigation, and that's key. It can't be for a civil case, which is what most immigration proceedings are. And then, and this is crucial, they have to convince a federal judge to issue a court order that forces the IRS to share that information. It's a really high legal bar, and it was designed for serious criminal cases, not for routine enforcement. So, for a long time, this was all kind of a legal theory. But then came a moment where that theory was put into practice, and it really shifted the entire landscape for the ITIN program. Just to put this on a timeline for you, the program is created in '96. It runs for almost 20 years. Then in 2015, the PATH Act makes the rules a bit stricter. But the real turning point, the moment that tested that firewall directly, came in 2018 with an agreement between the Department of Homeland Security and the Treasury. Okay, now this is a detail that a lot of people miss, but it is absolutely critical to understanding what happened. The big fear was that the IRS was just going to hand over a giant list of every ITIN holder to ICE. But the reality of the agreement is much, much more targeted. Here's how it works. ICE gives the IRS the name and address of someone who already has a final order of removal. The IRS doesn't give them any new data. They just respond with match or no match to confirm the address. So you might be wondering, how is that even legal? Well, it all goes back to that legal backdoor we were just talking about. The whole agreement was carefully designed to fit through that exception. When it was challenged in court, a federal judge basically said that the government's argument that this was for investigating non-tax criminal offenses was probably going to hold up, and so the agreement was allowed to stay in effect. So what are the ripple effects of all this? Whenever you have a big rule change or a new enforcement agreement, it puts the whole system under a lot of strain. So what does that actually look like for people on the ground? I mean, you can literally see the impact right here in this chart. See that big drop? Way back in 2012, the rules for getting an ITIN were made a lot tougher. And look what happened. Applications fell off a cliff by almost 50%, and they've stayed down ever since. It really suggests that when you add barriers or create uncertainty, people stop participating. And the strain isn't just about trust, it's about basic administration. In just one recent tax year, the IRS sent out almost 22,000 math error notices because their own system had mistakenly deactivated people's ITINs. That's 22,000 families dealing with delayed refunds and bureaucratic nightmares, all while trying to do the right thing. And this is why all of this matters so much. When the system feels too risky or just becomes too much of a hassle, what happens? People can't comply with tax law. They lose the paper trail that proves their work history, which could be critical down the road. It also means low-income families can't claim tax credits they're eligible for, and it can create a total mess for families trying to figure out health insurance. The consequences are incredibly real. So we end up right back where we started, with this fundamental conflict. The ITIN was created for one reason, to help the IRS do its job of collecting taxes. But it exists in a world where it bumps up against another powerful government priority, enforcing immigration laws. And the really tough question for all of us is, when those two duties clash, which one wins? That is the question that will define the future of the ITIN.